What I have decided to do is read some poems which will address the theme of the conference of literature and the other arts, as I understand it. Professor Byers has pretty well summed up the other ones that I'm interested in. A lot of them are not arts really, but popular culture. And in fact, I'm going to begin by reading an early poem from my first book called Popular Songs. And we'll then read a few more which impinge on other branches of the arts, I think, and then read you some recent unpublished poems, some of them, in fact, not so recent. I haven't really published very much poetry that I've written in the last 3 years, and I have written quite a lot. My habit is to make some corrections, put it away, and then take it out much later, look at it, either revise it some more, throw it away, or leave it as it is. I was just today reading a number of poems I haven't read since I wrote them, and thought that it might be interesting to read some of these, even though they may not turn out to be wonderful. They will give you an idea of what I've been up to lately. And I will try to read them as well as I can. Some of them are a little difficult for me to read on account of my difficulty reading my own writing. So that's what I'll do. And starting with Popular Songs, which I think was written as far back as 1952, perhaps 53. He continued to consult her for her beauty, the host gone to a longing grave. The story then resumed in day coaches. Both bravely eyed the finer dusts on the blue. That summer, the worst ever, she stayed in the car with the cur. That was something between her legs. Alton had been getting letters from his mother about the payments. Half the flood over, and what about the net rest of the year? Who cares? Anyway, you know how thirsty they were. The extra worry began it on the blue, blue mountain. She never set foot, and then and there. Meanwhile, the host mourned her quiet tenure. They all stayed chatting. No one did much about eating. The tears came and stopped, until becoming the guano-lightened summer night landscape, all one glow, one mild laugh lasting ages. Some precision, he fumed into his soup. You laugh. There is no peace in the fountain. The footmen smile and shift. The mountain rises nightly to disappointed stands, dining in the gardens of the moon. There is no way to prevent this, or the expectation of disappointment. All are aware, some carry a secret better, of hands emulating deeds of days untrustworthy, but these may decide. The face extended its sorrowing light far out over them, and now, silent as a group, the actors prepare their first decline. Next one is called Glazinoviana, an allusion to the 19th and 20th century Russian composer Glazunov, who wrote pretty but rather superficial music on the whole, especially ballet music, including the ballet Raimonda, which is still performed. The man with the red hat and the polar bear, is he here too? The window giving on shade, is that here too? And all the little helps, my initials in the sky, the hay of an Arctic summer night. The bear drops dead in sight of the window. Lovely tribes have just moved to the north. In the flickering evening, the martins grow denser. Rivers of wings surround us in vast tribulation. The next poem is entitled He, and it is the result of a dream. I dreamt of a poem where every line began with the pronoun he, and then I woke up and pedantically wrote such a poem. I put it in as an example of one kind of musical form that's been influential. This would seem to be related to a form like the Passacaglia, where there's an underlying motive that remains the same throughout the extent of the composition, but is embroidered on in the treble by variations that carry it forward, and yet it's constantly returning to its base. It's both rooted and kind of floating free at the same time. He cuts down the lakes so they appear straight. He smiles at his feet and their tired mules. He turns up the music much louder. He takes down the Vaseline from the pantry shelf. He is the capricious smile behind the colored bottles. He eats not lest the poor want some. He breathes of attitudes, the piney altitudes. He indeed is the white cliffs of Dover. He knows that his neck is frozen. He snorts in the veil of dim wolves. He writes to say, if ever you visit this island, he'll grow you back to your childhood. He is the liar behind the hedge. He grew one morning out of candor. He is his own consolation prize. He has had his eye on you from the beginning. He hears the weak cut down with a smile. He waltzes tragically on the spitting housetops. He is never near. What you need, he cancels with the air of one making a salad. He is always the last to know. He is strength you once said was your bonnet. He has appeared in Carmen. He is after us. If you decide he is important, it will get you nowhere. He is the source of much bitter reflection. He used to be pretty for a rat. He is now overproud of his Etruscan appearance. He walks in his sleep into your life. He is worth knowing only for the children he has reared as savages in Utah. He helps his mother take in the clothesline. He is unforgettable as a shooting star. He is known as Liver Lips. He will tell you he has had a bad time of it. He will try to pretend his press agent is a temptress. He looks terrible on the stairs. He cuts himself on what he eats. He was last seen flying to New York. He was handing out cards which read, he wears a question in his left eye. He dislikes the police but will associate with them. He will demand something not on the menu. He is invisible to the eyes of beauty and culture. He prevented the murder of Miss Danguet in Mexico. He has a knack for abortions. If you see he is following you, forget him immediately. He is dangerous even though asleep and unarmed. Someone asked me when I read that poem not too long ago if it was based on a particular person, and I said that it was based on several different people whom I met after I wrote the poem. I'll read a sestina again, and attempt to approximate a musical form, I think, one approaching the fugue. And this one is based on characters from the comic strip Popeye, which is obviously a branch of the arts. So I decided to go ahead and read this one. And And besides which, the title Farm Implements and Rutabagas in a Landscape is a title I discovered when I worked as editor at Art News and had to type up the auction notes. And that was the title of an old master drawing that was coming up for sale at an auction. I discovered that the titles of old master drawings are often mines of all kinds of ideas for poems. My friend, the poet James Schuyler, found one by Giulio Romano called Two Flying Figures Approaching a Standing Figure, which no one has used yet, if anybody wants it. The repeated end words in this poem are thunder, apartment, country, pleasant, scratched, and spinach. The first of the undecoded messages read, Popeye sits in thunder, unthought of, from that shoebox of an apartment. From livid curtains hue, a tangram emerges, a country. Meanwhile, the sea hag was relaxing on a green couch. How pleasant to spend one's vacation in La Casa de Popeye. She scratched her cleft chin's solitary hair. She remembered spinach and was going to ask Wimpy if he had bought any spinach. "M'love," he intercepted, "the plains are decked out in thunder today, and it shall be as you wish." He scratched the part of his head under his hat. The apartment seemed to grow smaller. But what if no pleasant inspiration plunge us now to the stars? For this is my country. Suddenly they remembered how it was cheaper in the country. Wimpy was thoughtfully cutting open a No. 2 can of spinach when the door opened and Sweet Pea crept in. How pleasant! But Sweet Pea looked morose. A note was pinned to his bib. Thunder and tears are unavailing, it read. Henceforth shall Popeye's apartment be but remembered space, toxic or salubrious, whole or scratched. Olive came hurtling through the window. Its geraniums scratched her long thigh. "I have news," she gasped. "Popeye, as forced as you know to flee the country one musty, gusty evening by the schemes of his wizened duplicate father, jealous of the apartment and all that it contains, myself and spinach in particular, heaves bolts of loving thunder at his own astonished becoming, rupturing the pleasant arpeggio of our years. No more shall pleasant rays of the sun refresh your sense of growing old, nor the scratched tree trunks and mossy foliage, only immaculate darkness and thunder." She grabbed Sweet Pea. "I'm taking the brat to the country." "But you can't do that. He hasn't even finished his spinach," urged the sea hag, looking fearfully around at the apartment. But Olive was already out of earshot. Now the apartment succumbed to a strange new hush. "Actually, it's quite pleasant here," thought the sea hag. "If this is all we need fear from spinach, then I don't mind so much. Perhaps we could invite Alice the Goon over." She scratched one dug pensively. "But Wimpy is such a country bumpkin, always burping like that." Minute at first, the thunder soon filled the apartment. It was domestic thunder, the color of spinach. Popeye chuckled and scratched his balls. It sure was pleasant to spend a day in the country. This poem is called 40s Flick. The shadow of the Venetian blind on the painted wall, shadows of the snake plant and cacti, the plaster animals, focus the tragic melancholy of the bright stare into nowhere, a hole like the black holes in space. In bra and panties, she sidles to the window, zip, up with a blind. A fragile street scene offers itself, with wafer-thin pedestrians who know where they are going. The blind comes down slowly. The slats are slowly tilted up. Why must it always end this way? A dais with woman reading, with the ruckus of her hair and all that is unsaid about her, pulling us back to her, with her, in the silence that night alone can't explain. silence of the library, of the telephone with its pad. But we didn't have to reinvent these either. They had gone away into the plot of a story, the art part, knowing what important details to leave out and the way character is developed. Things too real to be of much concern, hence artificial. Yet now, all over the page, the indoors with the outside becoming part of you, as you find you had never left off laughing at death. The background, dark vine at the edge of the porch. This poem is called Blue Sonata, and although it's not anything like a sonata form, it's a result of my thinking about it, I guess, and wondering how, what it really means that it's the way it is. Why should sonatas work out the way they do? And as a result, I think it's somewhat more abstract than my poetry usually is. Long ago was the then beginning to seem like now, as now is but the setting out on a new but still undefined way. That now, the one once seen from far away, is our destiny, no matter what else may happen to us. It is the present past of which our features, our opinions are made. We are half it, and we care nothing about the rest of it. We can see far enough ahead for the rest of us to be implicit in the surroundings that twilight is. We know that this part of the day comes every day, and we feel that, as it has its rights, so we have our right to be ourselves in the measure that we are in it and not some other day or in some other place. The time suits us just as it fancies itself, but just so far as we not give up that inch breath of becoming before becoming may be seen or come to seem all that it seems to mean now. The things that were coming to be talked about have come and gone and are still remembered as being recent. There is a grain of curiosity at the base of some new thing that unrolls its question mark like a new wave on the shore. In coming to give up what we had, we understand, gained or been gained by what was passing through, bright with the sheen of things recently forgotten and revived. Each image fits into place with the calm of not having too many, of having just enough. We live in the sigh of our present. If that was all there was to have, we could reimagine the other half, deducing it from the shape of what is seen, thus being inserted into its idea of how we ought to proceed. It would be tragic to fit into the space created by our not having arrived yet, to utter the speech that belongs there, for progress occurs through reinventing these words from a dim recollection of them, in violating that space in such a way as to leave it intact. Yet we do, after all, belong here and have moved a considerable distance. Our passing is a facade, but our understanding of it is justified. This is a poem called The Songs We Know Best, which I wrote half thinking about the music of a popular song of a few years back called Reunited, which kind of got in my head from hearing it on the radio, and I wrote this to kind of get it out of my head. Just like a shadow in an empty room, like a breeze that's pointed from beyond the tomb, just like a project of which no one tells. Or did you really think that I was somebody else? Your clothes and pant legs looking out of shape of the body over which they drape, body which is active in so many scenes. But did you ever think of what that body means? It is an organ and a vice to some, a necessary evil which we all must shun. To others, an abstraction and a piece of meat. But when you're looking out, you're in the driver's seat. No man cares little about fleshly things. They fill him with a silence that spreads and rings. We wish to know more, but we are never sated. No wonder some folks think that flesh is overrated. The things we know now all got learned in school. Try to learn a new thing, and you break the rule. Our knowledge isn't much. It's just a small amount, but you feel it quick inside you when you're down for the count. You look at me and frown like I was out of place. I guess I never did much for the human race. Just hatched some schemes on paper that looked good at first, sat around and watched until a bubble burst, and now you're looking good all up and down the line, except for one thing you still have in mind. It's always there, though often with a different face. It's the worm inside the jumping bean that makes it race. Too often when you thought you'd be showered with confetti, what they flung at you was a plate of hot spaghetti. You put your fancy clothes and flashy gems in hock, yet you paused before your father's door, afraid to knock. Once you knew the truth, it tried to set you free, and still you stood transfixed just like an apple tree. The truth, it came and went and left you in the lurch, and now you think you see it from your lofty perch. The others come and go, they're just a dime a dozen. You react to them no more than to a distant cousin. Only a few people can touch your heart, and they too, it seems, have all gotten a false start. In twilight, the city with its hills shines serene and lets you make of it more than anything could mean. It's the same city by day that seems so crude and calm. You'll have to get to know it, not just pump its arm. Even when that bugle sounded loud and clear, you knew it put an end to all your fear, to all that lying and the senseless mistakes, and now you've got it right, and you know what it takes. Someday I'll look you up when we're both old and gray and talk about those times we had so far away, how much it mattered then, and how it matters still, only things look so different when you've got a will. It's true that out of this, misunderstanding could end, and men would greet each other like they'd found a friend. With lots of friends around, there's no one to entice. And don't you think seduction isn't very nice? It carries in this room against the painted wall and hangs in folds of curtains when it's not there at all. It's woven in the flowers of the pattern spread and lies and knows not what it thinks upon the bed. I wish to come to know you, get to know you all. Let your belief in me and me in you stand tall, just like a project of which no one tells. Or do you still think that I'm somebody else? This one is called Someone You Have Seen Before. It was a night for listening to Corelli, Gemignani, or Manfredini. The tables had been set with beautiful white cloths and bouquets of flowers. Outside the big glass windows, the rain drilled mercilessly into the rock garden, which made light of the whole thing. Both business and entertainment waited with parted lips, because so much new way of being with one's emotion and keeping track of it at the same time had been silently expressed. Even the waiters were happy. It was an example of how much one can grow lustily without fracturing the shell of coziness that surrounds us and all things as well. We spend so much time trying to convince ourselves we're happy that we don't recognize the real thing when it comes along, the Disney official said. He's got a point, you must admit. If we followed nature more closely, we'd realize that. I mean, really getting your face pressed into the muck and indecision of it. Then it's as if we grew out of our happiness, not the other way round, as is commonly supposed. We're the characters in its novel, and anybody who doubts that need only look out of the window past his or her own reflection to the bright, patterned, timeless, unofficial truth hanging around out there, waiting for the signal to be galvanized into a crowd scene, joyous or threatening, it doesn't matter, so long as we know it's inside here with us. But people do change in life as well as in fiction, and what happens then? Is it because we think nobody's listening that one day it comes, the urge to delete yourself, take yourself out, as they say, as though this could matter even to the concerned ones who crowd around, expressions of lightness and peace on their faces, in which you play no part perhaps, but even so, their happiness is for you. It's your birthday. And even when the balloons and fudge get tangled with extraneous good wishes from everywhere, it is, I believe, made to order for your questioning stance and that impression left on the inside of your pleasure by some bivalve with which you have been identified. Sure, nothing is ever perfect enough, but that's part of how it fits, that mixed bag of leftover character traits that used to be part of you before the change was performed. And all those acquaintances bursting with new vigor and humor as though they wanted to call you down into closeness, not for being close or snug or whatever, but because they believe you were made to fit this unique and valuable situation whose lid is rising totally into the morning glory colored future. Remember, don't throw away the quadrant of unused situations just because they're here. They may not always be, and you haven't finished looking through them all yet. So much that happens in small ways that someone was going to get around to tabulate and then never did. Yet it all bespeaks freshness, clarity, and an even motor drive to coax us out of sleep and start us wondering what the new round of impressions and salutations is going to leave in its wake this time. And the form, the precepts, are yours to dispose of as you will, as the ocean makes grasses, and in doing so refurbishes a lighthouse on a distant hill, or else lets the whole picture slip into foam. Thank you.